see you.
Senator,
Thank you. Yes,
you know,
sir.
we've got a couple of good drinks later. We got these signature cocktails. One's called the Larry Slummers Sling, and the other's the Jack Lewin Coke. I hope you'll join us one. But let's have a broader discussion. I'm always interested in talking to you about how you and Joe Manchin, and one of the reasons I like having you together, we're both governors, and I think there are about 11 or 12 former governors. Most of you guys are running for president now. I'm surprised I haven't seen your hat in the ring.
Only about 35 or so.
Yeah, but you know, when you look at the questions which many of your former governors, now senators, are looking at what a healthy economy really, what the key building blocks are. Today we're at the Economy Summit, and you're always a blunt, and you've got a lot of clarity. And I'm interested in how you, and even if you were running for president, which I know you're not, what do you think we're missing in the economic debate that we're not getting right?
Well, I think what we're trying to do is move on the issues that are important to getting the economy going and growing, and I think you see that certainly with these trade agreements, which we're talking about right now, not only advancing TPA, Trade Promotion Authority, but also the Trans-Pacific Partnership. That's one example. Obviously, tax reform is a huge issue. If we could get tax reform going, that's something that we very much want to do. It's very complicated, but something that we need to do.
Why is it so complicated? Can you guys have all the votes?
It's very well, you have to get to 60, so it would have to be bipartisan. It's got to pass both the House and the Senate. Obviously, it has to be something that the president can agree to. We won't raise taxes. The president has indicated he wants to raise taxes, so that's certainly a bone of contention. And then think about all the things in the tax code that, everybody has a different idea of what should stay and what should go. So it's incredibly complex, and that's why it's hard to do.
How about a new Grover oath that we could just raise taxes just a little? Is that...
No, that's not, our idea, of course, is that you simplify the tax code, you lower the rate, you broaden the base, and you get revenue from growth, not higher taxes, and that's what we'll try to do, but it is very complicated. Even still, that's something we need to do, and we're working on a highway bill. We need we need a long-term highway bill, and I firmly believe that's going to happen. We've talked about how do you fund it. Repatriation may be one option.
You support the one-time tax on repatriation?
Well, I support bringing that rate down and then generating revenue, which would enable us to fund a 6-year highway bill. And I think that's very realistic and doable, and it's something I'm working with others, people all the way from Rand Paul on one side to Senator Boxer on the other side that have indicated an interest on working on something like that. But, we passed a budget, first the budget that actually balances since 2001. We passed a permanent fix to the SGR, the Sustainable Growth Rate, the so-called DOC fix. That's a permanent fix to something that's been pushed ahead from year to year. So, again, all these things are designed to we're working very hard on regulatory reform. I think regulatory reform can really galvanize economic growth in this country. So those are some of the fundamentals that I think can make a big difference.
We've talked a lot in the past. It used to be sort of novel when I would have you and Senator Manchin come together, Republican, Democrat. The other day I was with Rand Paul and Cory Booker, and then Cory Booker and Tim Scott. Is this notion that there's such distance between the parties more myth today than real? Because I keep finding it pretty easy to get Republicans and Democrats to come on together.
It depends on the issue. On some issues, there's, just fundamental differences, and on others, obviously it's less challenging. But with all of them, we've got to find ways to come together in a bipartisan way and come up with real solutions. One of the areas that I work on all the time is energy, as you well know, and that's why very often I'm here with Senator Joe Manchin. He's a Democrat, I'm a Republican. But
How did it feel to get that Keystone Pipeline bill passed?
Great.
Did you frame it and you put? Well, I mean, it passed the Senate, it didn't get signed, right?
Well, we got 63 votes. If we get to 67, we could override a veto. But
will you have a party?
Definitely. We'll have more than one party. We'll have a bipartisan multi-party. But I think we may be able to attach it to other legislation. But the key is this. To build an energy plan for this country, which we're hard at work on doing, producing energy from all sources and leading the world in energy production, we have to have an energy infrastructure plan. And we have to put it in place, and that means the right mix of pipelines, rail, road, and transmission. And that's not just an energy issue, a national security issue, but think of the incredible jobs issue. And it doesn't cost the government money. There's billions in private dollars ready to go to build that infrastructure, and it'll actually create revenue, again, revenue from a growing economy, not higher taxes.
So if we were the annual meeting of the Sierra Club, and everybody here was saying, if you look at Oklahoma today, they've had 2,500 earthquakes. They used to have sort of 13 a year. They've had 2,500 a year. There's concerns about the geologic disruption that comes with the process of fracking and the dislocation. And then in places like Fargo, some have argued that the massive growth in North Dakota, sort of like the old Wild West, it's happening at such a rate and speed. There's too many shortcuts being taken. So what is your response to our Sierra Club members here who might be raising some of these environmental impact concerns?
So the way to get both more energy, more cost effectively, and more dependably is by deploying these new technologies. And at the same time, these new technologies also produce better environmental stewardship. And so we're doing both. By creating a regulatory environment that encourages and empowers investment, you develop and deploy new technologies. Those technologies drive more energy production and better environmental stewardship. And the reality is, when we do that here at home, other countries around the world adopt those new technologies. And we can't export our regulations, but we can export our technologies. So if you really want better environmental stewardship, then you empower the very investment that I'm talking about that will produce more energy from all sources, and again, do it with better stewardship.
Is there anything we're missing, when you think about the economy? We've been talking today about education, talking about trying to figure out how to shore up the middle class. We've been talking about trade and exports. We've been talking about energy. We talked about everything you said. But what do you think of when you sit again and you meet with people from your state, concerned people who have concerns about their kids in the future? What would you like to see magazines of opinion and civil society begin to focus a bit more that we're not?
We need economic growth, like we're talking about, so that people have jobs and that we have a growing economic base. And it's that growth then that produces more revenue. And then as we have more revenue, we not only invest in the priorities, whether it's infrastructure, making sure we have a strong military, healthcare, all the things that people want, but at the same time, we balance our budget and we start reducing this debt. We have an $18 trillion debt that not only represents a real threat for future generations, which we don't want to hand off to our children, but it's also an issue. Getting our fiscal house in order is an issue for our strength in the world today. So it is about getting economic growth and combining that with real reforms so that we, again, not only have a growing economy and jobs, but we get our fiscal house in order.
Let me open up the floor to any last questions or comments. Shelley, I know you always have a question, comment. Microphone?
You surprised her.
I did, but she surprises me enough, I wanted to give it back to her.
Well, I'd just like to push you, if I may, on the question that Steve asked you, which I didn't hear the answer in what you responded, and that is the Sierra Club question. What really, you talked about, what would you say to Sierra Club? I mean, I don't think the answer you gave specified on how you address the climate change and environmental issues that, the energy plans suggest.
My point is that if you create a regulatory environment that encourages investment rather than blocking it, take the Keystone Pipeline as an example. If you encourage investment in the infrastructure and the right infrastructure mix and the new technologies, actually get these new technologies deployed, which private companies want to do, you get not only more energy, but you get better environmental stewardship, not only in this country, but around the world. I'm sorry?
On fracking.
Oh, on hydraulic fracturing?
Yeah.
Well, but the contention that I've seen is that is not a result of hydraulic fracturing, but that was that there was discussion that because of disposal of fluid that comes up with water that comes up when oil is produced, that's not a hydraulic fracturing issue. But again, as we continue to improve these technologies, you get less water usage and less byproducts for all these processes. So again, I think it's about continuing to improve the technologies when it comes to taking good care of the environment.
It was from a different
No,
part. We'll come back to it right here.
No, even the stories that you're referring to didn't indicate it was fracking.
Yeah. He's correct, actually. I was wrong.
So Secretary Castro was here earlier today, and one of the major problems in North Dakota is the housing crisis, that no one can afford housing. I would like to ask you, what role should government play in dealing with just the increases in rent that make housing so unaffordable in North Dakota?
Well, that's a good point, because we had such, fastest growing state in the country, so catching up on the infrastructure is a challenge. And that's where, again, I think anything we can do to encourage the kind of investment that helps us build infrastructure, whether it's roads, schools, private investment in housing, I think that's the thing that helps us catch up. But I do believe that the markets will respond if we make it easier to invest.
So before I enjoy my Jack Lew and Coke, do you think Joe Manchin would be better as a partner on a candidate with, say, a Jeb Bush or a Hillary Clinton?
I think who would be a better partner?
Well, everybody's saying Joe Manchin not running for governor in West Virginia. He's going to be there. He'll be a prime VP contender. Maybe that's wrong, but I just sort of think, would he be more attractive to a Republican ticket or a Democratic ticket?
I'm fond of Joe, and I think he'd be great on the ticket. And I enjoy
on any
working with him.
ticket.
Well,
so
obviously, he would be, if he's on a ticket, it's going to be on a Democrat ticket. But I like Joe. I like working with him, and I think.
All right. So who you've got 18 people out there who've declared, and the Koch brothers have come out and said who their top 5 are. So who are your top 5?
Oh, it's too soon to pick. We have so many good ones, right? I love, of course, former governors, having been a governor for 10 years. But I got to tell you, we're gonna have a lot of people in the race. It's too soon in my book to say, which one I think is the one that I would say is going to be the guy. But what I will say is this: I think we have some very, very good candidates. I think you're going to see some great discussions on our side of the aisle, and I think we have a tremendous job, or a tremendous opportunity to win the presidency.
It's a pleasure. I'm so glad you're able to stop by, and I have to admit that not at this moment, but usually this is about my 4th or 5th time I've been able to have a conversation with Senator Hoeven. I'm told by people at home that I pick up your accent, and it's complicated. It takes me a while to shake it off, but I want to. Thank you for spicing up my accent a bit. So with that nice Fargo twang.
Thanks for inviting me.
But thank you
No,
very
it's great
much.
to be
Ladies
with
and gentlemen,
you.
Senator
Thanks
John
so much.
Hoeven.
I enjoyed it. Thanks, Steve.